Morning, everybody, and thanks for joining me again for this week's Business Bite-Sized. And I'm really pleased to be joined by Mark Vincent this morning of Applied Change. And Mark has been delivering business change for over 25 years, often in fast-paced and highly resistant situations. And I know Mark's got a particular interest from the work he's been doing in why people resist change in some circumstances and then embrace it very openly in other circumstances. And I know he's been doing some work with the University of West of England around that and developing some really practical tools that business owners can use in their own businesses to help implement change. I suppose the bit about change that really fascinates me is that obviously the pandemic struck, didn't it, last year? And businesses, including ourselves, had to make some changes that frankly we've been talking about and thinking about doing for some time, and we pretty much had to implement those changes overnight, and they happened. So that fascinates me. But Mark, as a change expert with your experience, I guess, this morning, what would be one thing that you would focus on or highlight for business owners that are thinking about making changes in their business?
Yeah. Well, thanks, Will. I don't know, can you see the slides or?
I can, yes.
There you go. If I stick the slides, only just to help the conversation. Let me know when you got it, and I'll.
Yeah, we're good to go.
Excellent. So, yes, great question. So, I'll just put this up for a little bit. This is something I'm going to ask you to guess very quickly who said it. Have a little think about who said it and when it was said.
It sounds like it was said a couple of 100 years ago.
Just
something to do, probably somebody fighting somebody else in a war or something.
And yet, for anybody who's been involved in change, it still looks strangely familiar.
Yeah,
right?
Indeed.
And it's Niccolo Machiavelli, and it's 1532.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Not a lot's changed then, Mark.
Exactly. Yeah. So what we found, and the same, in business change, what we found is that we end up, and this isn't always attributed to Einstein, but we end up doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. And business change is most definitely one of those areas that we see quite a lot. So yeah, I often get told, conversations about whether people change or not, whether they struggle with change. Most people think people struggle with change, right? And as you rightly said earlier, Will, we only got to look back 12 months, and within the space of weeks, 2.6 billion, which is about a third of the global population, walked and put themselves essentially in some form of lockdown with a bit of guidance and a little bit of policing and a little bit of encouragement. But essentially, we did it, right? Because all the police in the world couldn't have forced 2.6 billion people to do that. So what is it that causes that to happen, and yet we struggle with change so much in business? Well, I thought one of the things I might do is tell you a little story about some sheep. So I used to live next to a farm, and my kids at the time were about 8 and 5, give or take, and it was early spring, and the lambs were in the field. So I said to the kids, tell you what, let's go have a word with Tim, the farmer, and go and see the lambs. So we trotted up there, and Tim was in the field with his 2 kids, who were even younger than mine. And he said, "Oh, I'm glad you're here. One of the ewes is struggling. One of the lambs is the sheep is struggling. We need some help. We need to get her in and help her out." So anyway, we all lined up in the field. There's me and my 2 kids, and Tim and his 2 kids, all standing there, kind of doing this. And we think that somehow this sheep is going to follow us, and we can be fabulous sheepdogs and get her through this little tiny gate. Well, I think you can probably guess the rest. We spent a good 5-10 minutes running around the field like a bunch of idiots. And eventually it struck me that I'd seen Tim in the field with the food bucket and the way the sheep reacted. So I said to him, "Tim, have you got that food bucket?" He said, yeah. I said, "Well, go and stand by the gate and let's try something." So we went and stood by the gate. We were trying to get the sheep through. Well, I think you could probably guess what happened next, right? So we rattled the food bucket, and the sheep walked calmly through the gate. And it struck me that that's often the way we end up running change in most businesses. especially larger ones actually. We do the equivalent of us lot standing in a field chasing the sheep around, trying to force this sheep to do something it didn't want to do. And what we ended up doing was giving that sheep a reason. And so my advice for change, one of many pieces of advice, but certainly something to start with, is to find, when you're trying to put change through a business, try and find the equivalent of the food bucket for your people. What is it that they want, that you want, and focus on that. And I think you'll find the whole process of change just gets a little easier.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Mark. Thank you. And I think that reflects on some of the conversations I have with businesses when I'm working with them. I think what happens as business owners, we tend to have a very clear vision in our own minds of what we want the business to look like and where the business is trying to go to. But because we're thinking about that and engaging with it all the time, if you like, we don't always communicate that very well to the rest of the team. So that may well be the reasoning, that may well be the logic, that may well be the motivation that the people need to understand. Well, why are we doing this in the first place? So I think that's actually really powerful. Let's just try and think about it from the other side's perspective and what it is. Why would they want to do this? Why do we need them to do this? What's in it for them, almost, I suppose. So yeah, fascinating, Mark. Thank you.
And of course, the opposite's true. What would cause them to fight back against it, resist it, or drag their heels? And it's really easy to forget that in their own shoes, they have their own views and their own perspective and their own way of coming at it. So if we can sort of get ourselves into their shoes for a little while, the whole thing can look very different. And the good news for this, of course, is if we get this right, the change gets easier, it becomes less expensive for the business, and becomes less stressful for the people involved. So everybody wins.
Yeah.
So well, some thoughts. We've got plenty more on this, so I'll just put up some things here. So we've got a little readiness assessment. So feel free to have a bit of fun with that. It's on our homepage, which I've just put up on screen, and it'll help you to sort of, if you're working through a change and struggling, give it a go, see how you get on, and have some fun with it.
Brilliant, Mark. Thanks for sharing that. I say a couple of minutes of your time to go and try the survey could be very beneficial. So thanks again. Change, it's here to stay. It's been said for a while that the only thing that's consistent now is change, but we know there's, we have to change all the time. We have to be agile. The world's moving around us, so it's really important that businesses are able to be agile and affect change very effectively. So thanks, Mark. I appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you, Will, and thank you, everyone. And good luck with it.
Thank you.